The year was 1923, and in the village of Oga, a young girl named Mangi was about to discover that freedom could be taxed. Not by her father, not by her village, but by an empire that's sitting far away that she has never seen. Far away in Britain and in other parts of Nigeria that has been invaded and conquered, colonial administrators sat behind wooden desks calculating revenues. They wanted roads. They wanted courts. They wanted government stations. They wanted warehouses. They wanted salaries. And above everything else, they wanted taxes. Welcome to the African Archive, where forgotten stories from African past are brought back to life, and the past reveals forces that shaped our present. Taxes from villages had never depended on money. Taxes from farmers who measured wealth in yam barns, taxes from fishermen who counted prosperity by their catch, taxes from families who had survived for generations without needing a single coin. Colonial governments believed taxation could modernize the land. But in villages like Oga, the consequences would be deeply personal. Among the men struggling beneath the new system that is introduced by the British Empire was a man called Kappa, Mangi's father. And before the tax collectors arrived, Mangi had a dream. She wanted to become a trader. Whenever merchants passed through Oga, she followed them. She watched salt sellers bargain. She watched clothes traders count their profits. She listened to their stories from distant markets that they went to. To Mangi, the marketplace was more than a commerce. It was freedom. It was movement. It was possibility. One day, she promised herself she would become a trader known beyond Oga. But dreams are often the first casualties of history. The first warning arrived with a man named Okoro. Okoro was not British. He was African, a local tax messenger working for the colonial administration. That made him even more feared because he knew the people. He knew their farms. He knew their families. And he knew exactly who had not paid and who has paid. The first time he came to the village of Oga, he carried a notice. The second time, he carried a warning. The third time, he carried humiliation. Standing before the elders gathered in the village square, Okoro announced the names of those still owing taxes. Kappa's name was among them. Heads turned. Whispers spread. The shame cut deeper than any knife. Why have you not paid your taxes? The colonial administrators have told us to bring it by next week, or you'll be banished from this village. Kappa thought about it. He has worked harder in his farm. He has sold more produce. He has borrowed from his relatives. He has sold his livestock. Still, it was not enough. Each month, the debt remained. Each visit from Okoro tightened the noose. Until one afternoon, another visitor arrived. His name is Akpu, the weirdest man in Oga. A man with 12 wives, dozens of children, huge yam barns, vast farmlands, and something Kappa desperately needed: cash. Akpu listened carefully. Then he made an offer. He would marry Mangi, Kappa's first daughter, and the bride price would clear Kappa's debts in colonial taxes. For several months, nobody spoke because everyone understood what was really happening. The tax was not taking Kappa's harvest. The taxman was almost taking his daughter. That evening, Kappa called Mangi into his hut, where she learned she was to become Akpu's 13th wife. The word seemed to stop. No, she said. It was the only word she could say. No to Akpu. No to the marriage. No to surrendering her future But poverty rarely negotiates, and desperation rarely listens. The decision has already been made, and Kappa has made up his mind. That night, sleep abandoned her. The village lay silent beneath moonlight. Hours passed. Then Mangi made the decision. If nobody will save her, she will save herself. Quietly, she packed a wrapper, a small calabash, a handful of dry cassava, and she slipped outside. Freedom waited beyond the village, she thought. Then a voice emerged behind her. Mangi, it was her mother, already crying. Neither women needed explanation. If I stay, Mangi whispered, I disappear. Her mother closed her eyes because she knew her daughter was right, but she also knew there was nowhere safe for her to go. Before dawn, Mangi returned inside. Not because she accepted her fate, but because every road to freedom had been closed. The wedding arrived 2 weeks later. Drums echoed in Oga. Women sang. Palm wine flowed. The village celebrated. But inside Mangi's heart, a funeral was taking place. As she walked towards Akpu's compound, villagers lined the path. She danced. She smiled. She whispered. Then an old woman spoke. Her back was bent with age, but her eyes were sharp. She stared directly at Mangi and said, this girl will not die inside another person's compound. People laughed nervously. Others dismissed her words, but Mangi heard them and remembered. That night, the celebration continued. Guests laughed. Drum rolled. It played. People congratulated Kappa. Many even envied him. After all, his daughter had married the wealthiest man in Oga. But inside his hut sat a small wooden box. Inside rested the bride price, the money that had paid the tax, the money that had saved his family. Slowly, Kappa opened the box. The coins glimmered in darkness. His hands began to shake. The money was here. Mangi was gone. One in exchange for another. His wife found him staring at the box, crying. Not quietly, not proudly, but with a broken spirit. What have I done? He thought. He whispered. There was no answer, only silence and regret. The tax debt has disappeared, but a deeper debt has been created inside Kappa's heart and his family. 12 women waited inside Akpu's compound to welcome Mangi. 12 wives, 12 rivals, 12 separate kingdoms. Each have spent years competing for the influence, competing for resources for their children, competing for Akpu's attention. Now, wife number 13 has arrived. Young, beautiful, intelligent, and carrying a hidden anger. The older wife smiled, but behind every smile was calculation. Akpu's compound, everyone had a place. The first wife controlled household decisions, another controlled food distribution, another supervised farm labor, another managed palm oil production. Every wife occupied a position within an invisible hierarchy. Everyone knew the rules. Everyone respected the order. Everyone accepted the system, and everyone except Mangi did what they are supposed to do. Akpu did not think he had done anything wrong. In his mind, he was helping. He had rescued Kappa from disgrace. He had settled the tax debt for his family. He had brought Mangi into the richest household in Oga. He was generous. He was traditional. He was in order, and he saw order from what he has done. But Akpu's greatest weakness was that he never saw Mangi. He saw the transaction. He saw the bride price. He saw the marriage, but he never saw the girl he has just married. From her first week, Mangi questioned everything. Why should younger wives work longer hours? Why should some children receive better treatment than the others? Why should certain wives enjoy privileges denied to others? The question was unsettled, and it settled nothing in her mind. At first, the wives laughed. Then they became irritated. Soon they became uncomfortable with her questions because every question have power, especially inside systems that survive by avoiding those questions earlier. Most new wives learn quickly. They stayed quiet after some time. They work hard. They accept their places. They avoid conflicts. But Mangi refused to follow all of this. When she believed something was unfair, she spoke and refused it vehemently. When she saw favoritism, she challenged it. When she saw witnessed hypocrisy, she exposed it. The older wives called her stubborn. The younger wives called her brave. Akpu called her troublesome. But nobody could ignore her. She was a principality in her own right. One evening, the wives gathered to prepare food. The atmosphere was tense. Argument has become routine. Resentment hung in the air. Then Mangi asked a question. A simple question, she said, yet powerful enough to shake the entire household. Who benefits from us fighting each other? Then silence fell. Nobody answered. Mangi continued. We quarreled over chores. Silence followed. We quarreled over food. Silence also followed. We quarreled over attention. Then she pointed towards Akpu's enormous yam barns. But whose barns grew larger while we fight? The women exchanged glances. For the first time, someone has begun seeing what they have not seen. This time with a different eyes. Not as rivals, but as participants in a system built upon division. And once people begin questioning a system, the system becomes difficult to control. The effects were immediate. The household split into camps. Some wives admired Mangi for her courage. Others despised her. Arguments multiplied. Old grudges resurfaced. New conflicts emerged. Whispers spread through every corner of the compound. The unity that Akpu had spent decades building began to crack. And the cracks widened every day. Akpu could see it. He was furious. Soon, the arguments produced consequences. Farm labor declined. Harvest schedule collapsed. Palm oil production slowed down. Food storage became disorganized. Children carried messages between rival groups and factions. Rumors spread constantly. The compound that once functioned like a successful enterprise now resembled a divided kingdom. For the first time in many years, Akpu's sweat began to suffer. At first, Akpu laughed. Then he worried. Then he panicked because every quarrel cost him money. Every disagreement weakened his authority. Every conflict reduced his productivity. The 13th wife has become the greatest problem in the household. And the most frightening part, she was not using violence. She was not using force. She was using ideas. And ideas are often harder to defeat than people. Akpu summoned the elders. A final attempt to restore peace. They gathered beneath a large tree in his compound. The elders advised Mangi to apologize, to respect hierarchy, to preserve harmony. For a long moment, she remained silent. Then she raised her hand. If peace means silence, she paused, then it is not peace. The elders shifted uneasily. The final confrontation had begun. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. One of them leaned forward. His voice was calm, but these words carried weight. A woman who refuses correction may lose her home. The gathering fell silent. All eyes turned towards Mangi. This was the moment everyone expected her to surrender. The moment everyone expected fear to finally appear. But Mangi had already lost the thing she feared most. Her freedom. And once that has been taken away from her, intimidation becomes far less effective. Mangi slowly shifted her face and her head towards the elder. She looked at the elders. She looked at their wives. She looked at the Akpu and she spoke. If keeping my dignity costs me this marriage, the crowd held its breath. Then so be it. I am not interested in the first place. Silence. Absolute silence. The elders stared at her. The wives stared at her. Even Akpu seemed momentarily stunned. He has expected submission. He found defiance. In that moment, everyone present understood something. This marriage could not be saved. Weeks later, Akpu called another gathering. Word spread quickly across Oga. People assumed punishment was coming. Others expected reconciliation. Instead, Akpu delivered a decision that shocked the village. Mangi will leave my household. For several moments, nobody spoke. A wealthy elder divorcing a wife was uncommon. Divorcing a young wife acquired through substantial bride price was almost unheard of. Divorcing a wife, number 13, after such public conflict was extraordinary. The marriage was over. And with those words, Mangi walked away, alone, without words, without protection, without status. Most people believed her life has just ended. The gossip began immediately. She is finished. Who will marry her now? She challenged the powerful man. She destroyed her own future. The village judged her harshly. Some pitied her, others mocked her openly. Meanwhile, Akpu's supporters celebrated. The troublesome wife has gone. Order would now return to his household. Peace could now return. The old system had survived. Or so they believed. But while others saw failure, Mangi saw education. For years, she has lived inside one of the most successful economic enterprises in the region. Akpu's household was successful, and the enterprise was run with the straight precision and risk-carrying capacity of an entrepreneur that Akpu has been. She has watched carefully. She has observed everything. How palm oil was traded, how food was stored, how labor was organized, how wealth was accumulated. While others saw a failed wife, Mangi saw a business school, and she intended to use every lesson she has learned from the household. Her first transaction were small. A basket of smoked fish, a few containers of palm oil, some salt, a handful of clothes. Nothing impressive, nothing dramatic. But the connections she has made while in Akpu's house were very helpful because people wanted to trade with her as Akpu's former wife. But Mangi understood something many people did not. Great fortunes often began with small exchanges. So she kept moving, she kept learning, she kept trading, and slowly the profits began to grow. Months became years, years became momentum. Mangi traveled to markets beyond Oga. She learned new routes. She built relationships. She negotiated better prices. She expanded her network. People began recognizing her name, then respecting it, then seeking it. The dream she had carried as a child was beginning to take shape. The girl who once followed traders was becoming one herself. As her reputation spread, people remembered the old woman, the woman who had spoken during the wedding, the woman everyone had ignored. This girl will not die inside another man's compound, they remembered. The villagers repeated the words, and suddenly they no longer sounded strange, they sounded accurate. Because Mangi had done something few people expected. She has escaped the future everyone else has assigned to her. Years passed, markets expanded, roads improved, trade increased, and among the most successful traders in the region stood a woman named Mangi. The same woman everyone once mocked, the same woman everyone once pitied, the same woman everyone once dismissed. Her trading network stretched beyond Oga. She employed workers, she purchased lands, she financed farms, she lent money to people, and she became a person whose opinion mattered. The woman who had once been treated as property has become an economic force to reckon with. Then came the moment nobody expected. Akpu's fortune has begun to decline. A poor harvest, growing debts, a sick grandson. The years had not been kind to Akpu. For the first time in a long time, Akpu needed help. And everywhere he turned to, he heard the same name. Go and meet Mangi. She's the only one that can help you. She has the money, she has the network, and she controls the resources now. So one market day, he went looking for her. The market was crowded, traders shouted, customers were bargaining, goods changed hands, and at the center of it all stood Mangi. Workers loaded her merchandise, assistants recorded transactions, young traders sought her advice. For several moments, Akpu simply stayed. The woman he once dismissed has become the person he now needed. Their eyes met. There was no hatred in hers, no bitterness, no fear, only calm. For the first time in his life, Akpu truly saw her not as a wife, number 13, but not as a transaction, not as a problem anymore, but as a person. Mangi listened to Akpu. She heard his concerns, she understood his situation, and then she helped him. Not because he deserved it, not because she had forgotten, but because she no longer needed revenge. Revenge would have proven she was still trapped by the past. Mercy proved she had moved beyond it. And in that moment, her victory became complete, not because Akpu had fallen, but because she has risen higher than anyone imagined. The old balance of power has disappeared. Not long after the encounter with Akpu, Mangi made a decision. For years, she has traveled across markets, built businesses, expanded trade routes, accumulated wealth. But there was one journey she has avoided, the journey home to meet her father. The journey back to the village where everything began. The village where a tax changed her future. The village where her freedom was exchanged for survival. The village where she had last seen her father as a young girl. Now she returned, not as a wife number 13, not as a victim, but as a woman whose name carried weight far beyond Oga. Kappa was old now, much older than Mangi remembered. His shoulders had fallen. His steps were slower. His voice had softened. Time has taken much from him. As they sat inside the hut, Mangi's eyes wandered around the room. Then she noticed something. A small wooden box, dusty, worn out, carefully preserved. For a moment, her breath caught it. She recognized it instantly. The Pride Prize box. The box that had once held the money used to pay the colonial tax. The box that has changed both their lives. For years, it has remained there, untouched, waiting like a wound that refused to heal. Mangi stared at the box, then slowly turned toward her father. Why do you still keep it? For a long moment, Kappa said nothing. His eyes remained fixed on the box. Then his lips began to tremble. Finally, he spoke up. The tax collectors took my money. He paused. A deep silence filled the hut, but I was the one who gave away my daughter. The words landed heavily. Years of regret, years of guilt, years of sorrow compressed into a single sentence. Kappa lowered his head, unable to look at her, unable to escape the memory, unable to forgive himself. For many years, anger has lived inside Mangi. Anger at the marriage, anger at the humiliation, anger at the loss of freedom. But sitting before her father, she saw something she had never fully seen before. Not just the man who surrendered her, but a man trapped by forces larger than himself. A frightened father, a desperate farmer, a victim of the same system that had wounded her. Slowly, Mangi stood. She walked towards the wooden box, placed her hand upon it, and spoke softly. Then, let it remind us. Kappa looked up, his eyes filled with tears. Not of what I was sold for. She paused, a faint smile appearing on her face. But of what I became, she smiled. At the moment, Kappa broke down, and for the first time since she was a child, Mangi embraced him. The story of Mangi is not simply the story of one marriage. It is not simply the story of one divorce. It is not simply the story of one rebellious wife. It is the story of what happens when powerful economic systems enter private lives. The colonial tax system did more than collect revenue. It changed marriages. It changed families. It changed relationships. It changed destinies. It transformed daughters into bargaining chips. It turned households into economic units and forced impossible choices upon ordinary people. The tax collectors never intended to shape Mangi's future, yet they did. Akpu never intended to create a rival, yet he did. Kappa never intended to lose his daughter, yet he did. History often works that way. Its greatest consequences are rarely planned. Long after the tax collector disappeared, long after the colonial officers left, long after Akpu's authority faded, the name people remembered was not the wealthy man with 12 wives. It was Mangi, the girl exchanged for tax money, the wife who questioned an entire household, the woman who built her own fortune, the trader who fulfilled her childhood dream, and the daughter who turned home not as property, who returned home not as property but as a proof that systems can wound people, proof that poverty can force terrible choices, proof that history can steal futures, but also proof that a person is not always destroyed by the things that was not meant to break them. The colonial tax system tried to turn Mangi into currency. Akpu's household tried to turn her into obedience. The village tried to turn her divorce into shame, but Mangi turned every hardship into strength. And in the end, she became exactly what she had dreamed of becoming. As a little child, watching traders pass through Uga, a woman known beyond her village, a woman who belonged to herself. Because being sold is not the same as being owned. And sometimes the most powerful act of resistance is resisting to become what the world expects you to be. Thank you for being with us today. Please like and subscribe. I tell these stories all the time. This is African Archive. Thank you very much.